1, 2, 3, 4.
One, two, 1, 2. You're listening to the Online Time Fame podcast. I'm your host, JD, and today's show is titled Charleston White, Paid from Comedy. Now, with the paid in comedy, with us mentioning Charleston White, as we said, if you've never listened before, the whole thing about Charleston White, I guess they would call it a metaphor, because he's symbolic now of someone who rose from non-traditional media. Because, you know, the old-time stars, the people from the past, they came up from television, the major channels, NBC, ABC, and CBS. It was very difficult back then because one had to audition, work their way up from the ground up. Sometime for the so-called black folk, it was called the Chitlin Circuit. For Caucasians, it could have been Broadway, it could have been theater, it could have been something like that. As I said, vaudeville came from so-called black folk, but people don't know that, which became Broadway, which then evolved to movies. So, they were, so-called American descendants of slavery. They were there from the beginning in that. So with Charleston White coming from the ground level, speaking to the people, working with the people, coming through the digital mediums that we have today, so-called social media, by him breaking through there and moving into the mainstream comedy, moving into actual venues and clubs, anyone who says something against him that is strictly on a social media platform level, it's a checkmate from him. There's no comparison, because a lot of people were already online, and they didn't capitalize on expanding their, I guess it's called, revenue streams. They didn't focus on that. A lot of people, and this is, just on a small scale, on a digital scale, on a social media scale, it can be said true. And this is also true for a lot of mainstream celebrities. They've been in their positions for so long that they don't have to change that much, because, we're almost to a place where the common listener, people, we listen to stuff, we do activities, and then we listen to these podcasts and everything, and we're not really investing in what's being said, and people can sometimes put us to sleep with the same message, no improvement. The world can be at war all around us and exploding, and these people are still talking about something that happened when they were backstage at a concert, when they used to be popular 25 years ago. We see an influx of these types of individuals. But as we said, not to go to that level, we did say the old saying, small minds talk about people, average minds talk about events, great minds talk about ideas. Great minds talk about ideas and then the solutions. Because, a lot of people can sit back, man, did you ever think about this? They high and they coming up with all kinds of imaginary stuff. A lot of dudes create some of the music we love while they was high. So that's, if that's the expression, it leads to art. But we're talking about actual solutions for the hardships that everyday people go through. Working class people not able to do what they want to do no more. So there is no breakthrough. The people who are in positions are holding positions, holding the so-called folk down, blaming the so-called white man. But that ain't stopping this individual from selling their little products and trying to make their economics off of what we got. We ain't got that much. But it ain't like they can drop a jewel and open our horizons where we can do better. So they not even sharing how to do stuff. And I hear this said, I'm not the first to say it, we just see it. So at this point, when Charleston White hit the set, when he hit the scene, when he hit the non-traditional media outlets, he's now elevating. He's now touching ground. So he's in conversations with people behind the scenes, and he's adjusting his act, and he said that. But what I'm saying is, so those who ain't even on that level, nowhere close, they can't say nothing. They can't really criticize. They have to alter what they're doing, because we're known as a people to just talk. Let me give a quick example of what I mean there. When we talk about global expertise, because we got a lot of people that perpetrate to be experts. They say they're experts, they read some books, and they may be affiliated with an organization that used to be popular. For example, let's say the NAACP, National Advancement, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. They used to hit companies, corporations, and universities with so many lawsuits they couldn't breathe. The late Supreme Court Justice Thurgood Marshall, he used to work for the NAACP. So, that's a whole nother tangent we ain't gonna go on. But what I'm saying is you got people today, they that are associated and affiliated with these organizations, they ain't making no power moves. They ain't sued nobody in decades. Because now they're comfortable. They benefit off the names of being affiliated, and you can go down the line. That's why so-called black folk don't get respect. Because the ones who are in the so-called position that's supposed to do something, they can't do nothing because they think if I do something too real, I'm going to get checked. But that's because they're limited and they're not great. So that's why I said small-mindedness people, talking like, gossip, news, current events, but it involves personalities. And even with celebrities. See, this is online time fame that we're pointing to. That ain't what we're aspiring to be. We don't want to be known. We don't want to be that. But why ain't nobody saying certain stuff? It's sad that somebody who just on the street level doing what they doing, they may be making moves, ain't got to be a public figure. But because the so-called public figures ain't even doing their job. Get your paper and then help some others. Help some other people, not with a nonprofit. Don't just get a foundation and your accountants told you to do it and ain't no real change came to your neighborhood. It ain't one building in people's neighborhood that you can own the building. I ain't even going to tell you the solution of how they supposed to do it because a couple have some things. But what I'm saying, their voice is small as men and they don't rank amongst men amongst men. They don't rank globally, but they don't even resonate nationally. But because they're in the media and they get the interviews and they're already locked into the associations and they're already locked in with the relationships with different companies, they put them on a platform and on certain platforms that other people may not be on. Then they look like they're real. They may say some sound bite, but if anybody who reads books and studies, they'll know the real and they'll know these dudes probably read that. And then they say something around that time, but what was this, 50, 60 years ago? They speaking on stuff. Ain't none of these dudes you see on the street that talk on the digital platforms supposed to be activists, supposed to be whatever, so-called men. They not on certain levels. We won't say who. Those who read, no. Everybody knows what inner city people read, and the people who we see today, they're not on those people's scale of where one would be if they had evolved to the point of where those people used to be. I ain't talking about radicalism or none of that, militancy or none of that. I ain't talking about all these dudes is doing is calling people white supremacists with no solution to bring people together, because you got to work together with the people you're around. It's in some capacity. Unless you're going to war and them people ain't got enough weaponry to go to war. So why are they talking? What are they talking about? But the point is this. This is what I'm saying in the example why the people ain't making no moves and they don't have a global outreach. Yeah, they can go global and talk, but what are they able to do globally with a global level of respect? Nothing. They can just say some stuff and, oh, that's entertaining, and you come in with your little project. So the point I'm saying is this. Roy Jones Jr., former world champion, boxing enthusiast, trainer, boxing figure, still relevant in the boxing world, as a commentator still today, as a critic of boxing, as a historian. A lot of, just a medal-winning, Olympic medal-winning champion. So Roy Jones Jr. can go to Russia. Not only did he go to Russia, Roy Jones Jr. asked the president of Russia, hey, you should give me citizenship to Russia. Just give me citizenship. Putin, Vladimir Putin, is that his name? He said, I'll give it to you if you will use it. He said, yeah, I'll use it. So my point is, Roy got a direct line to the president of Russia. So he can say, hey, I'm driving down the street. Can you tell your troops to back off? That's my car procession driving down the street. That's Roy overseas. He's training Russian fighters' techniques and stuff. They know he's an expert at what he does in fighting. So he now has a citizenship to Russia from the president of Russia. You see that? You see what we're saying here? He's recognized. Obviously, Muhammad Ali is recognized in every continent around the world, not for boxing, also for his views on different topics, different level there. So I ain't going to go into it. But that's why when dudes criticize Muhammad Ali, and, that's a whole nother thing that they don't even know about because they didn't read enough books about who they're really talking about. They were too young to really know, unless one reads who Muhammad Ali was. They don't really know. They saw some clips and then they talk about fight percentages. They don't really know the full story behind Muhammad Ali, but that's another story. The point is, because Roy Jones Jr. is now a man among men for boxing, he can go to Russia. Now, obviously, Russia is, if they're involved in conflicts and different wars. So that means if you got Russia, he can go do the same thing in China. See, he can go, like, for another example, Stephon Marbury, the basketball player, played basketball in the United States, New York Knicks, played in China, coached in China. He's one of the few people, maybe 2 to 3 people in China who have a statue. There's only 3 statues in China. One of them is Stephon Marbury from Brooklyn. So that's why we say, for sports. But my point is, these dudes is talking in the domestic level. They talking in the U.S. They don't get no props around the world. They maybe can go to a third world or an underdeveloped country and get some attention. But as far as like a major power, these dudes ain't got that. But when they're talking domestically, they're talking like they're really significant in the U.S. So that's just the way to keep the people to sleep. Keep them sleep. You talk like you're somebody, but these dudes who is talking, they nobodies. So if you're talking about small minds, talk about people, we don't want to talk about them like that. We don't want to point out their names, because if they're running game, we don't hate the game. We don't dislike, but that's sad that someone runs game on their own people. Some of them ain't their own people. Some of them look so-called black, but if you look into their background, they not from here anyway. So you can put anybody in front of so-called black folk, and that's the game they lack. So that's why we want to do some episodes, and it's going to be Long Range Game, Charleston White, Long Range Comedy Game. And so we say Long Range Comedy Game because he taught how to come from the digital world and evolve into the actual world, doing business in the actual world. So, social media, digital platforms, they give the advantage in an economic way where we can create products, or everyone has some skill that they know how to do, that they can probably see if I can develop or package my skill and bring that to, onto the people from a digital level. Meaning this, one can get a platform, let's say a website, but they may not be able to afford a building, an office. So you can start with a website, generate some income and some revenue, save the funds. This is in theory. It may not be as simple as I'm saying, and there may be other alternative ways to make this happen. But at least they can have an aim and an objective. All right, I'm going to start out with my business here. And, I may fix cars. I may be good at customizing sneakers, or whatever the business may be. Then they can eventually work their way up to having a space to work out of. My point is, these dudes who you see them on these former rappers, the rapper can't be no hero because they never evolved to teach anything. They're not really intelligent enough. Yeah, they read books. Some of them read. You have to read to get ideas for lyrics. But some of the moves they made were so irresponsible and backward. I'll give an idea. I don't really want to say who it was, but there's some rappers who are said to be Muslim. They appear to be Muslim, present themselves to be Muslim, and they may be called by a Muslim name, attribute, pardon me, so I'm not going to speak against Muslims, but the whole world knew. You released that song during the month of Ramadan, brother. You released the song with scantily clad women in a music video during Ramadan. It was playing. Come on, man. You think they don't see that? Period. If it was any time during the year. If they present themselves as Muslims and they got liquor in the music video, scantily clad women. And it ain't like they was dropping science in between to say, well, we going to play it off, brother, with the women. But if you listen to the jewels that's being dropped, it's really knowledge. That ain't what happened. So everybody in the non-Muslim world, they know that these people did that. They may have said, hey, you could drop a video. This dude too high or ignorant or just not world aware to know. I mean, I can't touch nothing like that during the month of Ramadan. I can't release that. And they did it. Negroes. So this is what I'm saying when I talk about man among men. They make world mistakes and don't even know. So when people say, oh, man, you can't go to this country and do this and that, you don't know what conversations they having behind the scenes, and then what did they do when they were there. So that's a lot of politics, so we ain't bringing that. We're just saying from Charleston White's perspective of getting on in the street level and telling people like myself, do it like this. These dudes who try to come get paper, they feel entitled. You know how you know where entitlement is a sign? When you always hear somebody say, well, you know, my God-given gift. We all have something that we have that we can do that comes from the same source, even if that's someone who don't believe in God, even if it's an evolutionary source. We're all good at something. It's just about figuring out what you're good at. So the point is, these dudes, they just coming to get something. They ain't got nothing to give. They have no knowledge. They have no true value when it comes to the people, because they're not men amongst men. They're just individuals in the world, in the way. And that's what the old timers used to say. So, you know, and now they're old and don't know nothing. These people, when people are young, they can be kind of ignorant. It's attributed to youth. But then these same dudes be 40 sounding like they 20. And I ain't talking about calling them a old YN or none of these ignorant terms, just not men among men. That's what it is. You know, it ain't about all of them other things that become a fad. So I'll say it like this. A lot of people are selling themselves as they are these contributors to culture when they're talking a narrative that is one level of the narrative. That's like a low level of the narrative, because there's information that can't be said online. You wouldn't say it for free. Because if you give somebody basic information and they study, that's on them to come up with the rest of the information. Because if you told them the full science, they wouldn't say it was real anyway, because they didn't work to earn it. You work to earn knowledge when you go to college. It don't mean that these are the people who are the only ones that know. Did you learn at school? Or did you learn in jail? Because you were shut down and now you can slow down and now you can read. But you might have made enough paper where you could have stepped out the game when you was in the street and then invested and went a different way. Many people have done that. Many do. So everybody on there talking about why they was hustling, that's off the record conversations anyway. So with Charleston White, this is a small individual in physical stature, but a giant among men. Because once he dropped certain knowledge, he proved his mettle. He proved when people came at him for criticizing Caucasians, he said one word: ethnocentric. That means thinking one's culture or ethnicity is better than another. So once he dropped that, he said, white people, y'all ethnocentric. Go one step further, it's taught to be Eurocentric. That means the European idea that their group is better than others. So right now we got a lot of people in this country. They get to do what they do. They suppress the American descendant of slavery, because Charleston White proved to be a giant, being not a physically tall individual or heavy in physical stature, but a giant mentally. See, we looking at the physical size, and what they used to say, the old school saying was, it ain't the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog. So if that fight is in somebody, that's when people get surprised, when they see that individual that's 5'6" knocking out dudes that's 6'6", and that happens in the streets every day. So, you know, picking on the wrong people, and they never know who they really touching. So be careful. Don't advocate violence. Don't initiate violence. Self-defense is respected, but don't be fooled, and don't take advantage of others. So the point is, with Charleston White, they coming at him, and he's a mental level above them. And it's really they're not even being told, and they couldn't be told, because a fool can't often be educated. Hey man, don't even step to him with that. He already told everybody it's long range game. He took the long range game. He gave it to everybody. He told us what to do. So he said, hey man, put your something on, get your website on. My people had done it already, but it was a great confirmation that he was a demonstrator. He was showing and demonstrating what to do. He was the demonstration, Charleston White, by saying, nah, you got to take it to the offline level. Start it online and take it offline. These dudes arguing, trying to get him to beef back and forth so they can generate AdSense and revenue from Google. Come on, that's not high level. He already won that battle. He won that battle, because why are you battling me when you're supposed to stand and compare yourself to your past self, meaning your yesterday self should be one notch below your today self, and your tomorrow self should be one level higher, wiser, and smarter than your day before self. Then your today self, the tomorrow self, should be stronger, wiser. These dudes want to talk back and forth and have something to say. Ain't nothing to say without no real motion and no movement. Sitting back just being on so-called YouTube strictly. And then attacking other people back and forth, because man among men it's another individual that needs to be talked to instead of that so-called brother you step into. Who else should be talked to about the issues and the problems that you got in your life? Who is the cause of many of those problems and hindering what you're trying to do? Who? It ain't that dude you arguing with. That's petty bickering. That ain't no real conversation. So-called black community is controlled by cowards and bullies. See, most of those bullies, they victimize their own neighborhoods and they bully and demand respect. But not because people love them, not because they benefit the community. That's the past. That's 60 years ago when you had groups that supposedly stood for the people. These dudes is really just trying to make a way to make some economics, and any message that they talking was a message that never stopped being said. They was away in jail. It was people on the street still bringing it, still representing it, still being that. They don't have to come on some weird show. If anything, start your own show. But what the stuff they talking ain't really nothing, because that's a perpetuating message that subliminally still teaches children go to jail. Those who had hardship situations that led them to jail, of course there's sympathy for them, or empathy. One should be empathetic, and we are. But as far as getting up and like even doing certain stuff, nah, that ain't have to be done. Because if we ain't going to explain it. People supposed to just know. It was stuff that's supposed to have been done instead of that. But the point here is what? Long range comedy game. That's what we're going to have a series for that. Long range comedy game of Charleston White. It can't be said enough times. When Charleston White brought that comedy, when he brought that level of conversation, it expanded the whole country. It expanded the country of those who heard what he had done, who had seen his example. When he talked about, Charleston White was talking about when he used to go and help others and speak to others and help others' children, and he'd be raising funds and distributing book bags or whatever. And book bags, that's based on donations, because a lot of the companies that manufacture these items, they'll give them away for school drives, school supplies, sneaker drives, and they'll have coat drives. That's all what companies do, is to help and give back, but it's also tax deductible. But by him doing that, his children weren't even getting stuff, because he was putting more time into the streets than his children. Anyone who studied, as Charleston White mentioned, anyone who knows the history of Dr. Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, they wasn't trying to keep the money. So when you see these dudes, they always selling something. They present themselves to be some high-powered scholar. These dudes ain't got 0 credits. Malcolm X did his college time in the penitentiary. There's an old saying from the legendary boxing promoter. No, excuse me. It wasn't Don King. Don King did say he got his education in the penitentiary, so don't get it wrong, because he's one of the most intelligent individuals to ever live. Straight off that, if you do the research on who Don King is, always read. When you read, you sound old even when you're not. They're like, damn, how you know that? Read. That's the kryptonite of so-called black folk. And even Chris Rock, one of his comedy specials, he said, if you want to keep something from a Negro, put it in the book. That's an old saying. He didn't never claim to make that up. Everybody knows that already when you listen to them old folks talk. These days, everybody on their phone with their head down. You don't even listen. You see an elder in the room, you're supposed to be quiet, get next to him and listen. Hey, how you doing? Get them to talk. Next thing you know everything more than everybody around you. That ain't how it is no more. Everybody got their view. I got my rights. I got my viewpoint of how I get to see it. I'm just living my truth. That's a delusion. Somebody told you being obese and risking yourself for heart disease, high blood pressure, and all the medical complications associated with obesity and being overweight is your truth? Yeah, if you're committing suicide, man, if you taking yourself out, it is. Of course. But as far as you can't tell nobody when they're out of order no more. Nah, that's backward, bro. You got issues. The square peg goes in the square hole. The in don't go in the out, bro. That's just common nature. That's nature. But you can't say nothing that's real, because there's a certain level you reach where it's propaganda. This is just stuff that people are selling. And you don't have these dudes that's strong enough to stand. And when they said it enough times, what they gonna keep repeating that for 1,000,000 times? All right, so what's the antidote? What's the remedy? What's the formula? As the DOC would say. The formula. What is it? They don't have it. They don't got the formula, so they keep recycling and regurgitating the same thing. That's good for sales and marketing, but they ain't contributing. They ain't got nothing to solve true problems, but they right there in mentioning names and presenting people who had solutions. These people aren't a continuation of those solutions. They're just like, they call them snake charmers and snake oil salespeople. That's all they are, and that's not to be negative about them. That's sad because they don't have that next level, and they still got bills, but they don't have that next level of evolved wisdom. They ain't got it. And like I said, because everything stopped at a certain point and people could talk real good, there's a field of study that I want to look into. It's called an elocutionist. Elocution is one who can speak a certain way. And it's just like when we spoke on before, oratory. So-called black folk are hypnotized by an oratory tradition. That's why you got people who talk about the game. The game is spoken, but it's not like it's a lie. It's just very poetic. That's why people look up at rappers. But the rappers, his evolution stopped. It sounds like a genius when you're 22 years old because they heard somebody else say it and then they said it. See, but when one is like for years and years later, they supposed to be dropping the same knowledge of a biblical context. They ain't that deep. They ain't got it like that. They ain't dropping no Quran equality, equal level knowledge. They don't have that. Come on, man. They ain't feeding the multitudes and you know what I'm saying? Out of they can't just multiply the food and turn water to wine. I mean, they can't turn something from nothing to something. They ain't got that. They just want to drop the music, do a show, and get a check. That's what a rapper doing. But and those who made enough to sit back, fine. And if that's what they do, that's what they supposed to do. But don't project and present as though it's something very profound. It's not. The evolution of that, you have to look at what's going on in the world around. They can't call no presidents of countries and say, hey, I need you to ship 2 boat tons of this because my neighborhood is a little short. They can't call the president of no country and do that. Now, they're going to try and do it as we said it. That's why I say they steal the ideas from the people on the street. When you go to the studio, you go to a recording studio, dudes is in there, their whole crew, everybody in there saying stuff. Man, you should say this would be hot, or the latest word. That they pick all of that up and they put it in there. They don't necessarily say where they got it from, but that just be street knowledge. So that's just, the knowledge of the game. So as I said, an elocutionist, they speak well. That was something that's respected. People don't even know what that is. Elocutionist, what's that? Because it ain't something that's on social media. It ain't something where people just talking. Now, that is a form of talking, but it also is affiliated or associated with diction, standard English. These folk can't even speak no more. So that's what Charleston White was flipping the game because he can speak proper. People have seen it. But then when you turn that knob and turn that dial and you start speaking country, that's a different dialect. So as people, we as a people, we like country. What's up, dog? What's that, man? Oh, man, I'm just trying to get it. That's a whole nother language. Then that was established in Ann Arbor, Michigan. That was a state supreme. That's a federally recognized court case where they have to recognize. It's called BEV, Black English Vernacular. Was recognized that a language that children had to be respected for and build a bridge to teach children on that level. So that's a whole nother thing. That I don't remember the case number, but I just told you it's Ann Arbor, Michigan. And it was the Martin Luther King Jr. Elementary School or something in Michigan. That's what that came from. So the point is, it's a recognized style of speaking. But folk like that street talk. And that street talk is where they gravitate to. You start talking too much information, brothers start getting sleepy. Instead of getting hyped up like I'm going to use that knowledge, they start drowsy, man, I don't want to hear that. And I get it. It might be because, people got stressed. They probably weren't prepared to hear that kind of stuff. Because if you listen to regular TV every day and you listen to regular media, you're being put to sleep by them negative messages. I don't listen to none of that. None of that mainstream garbage. I don't know about it. I listen to it when I want to hear it, but I'm not going to let that be on the general cycle and I'm watching it and it's brainwashing me slowly with subliminal messaging. You're not going to play me like that. That's why so many people are on the digital platforms. Digital platforms are bigger than those TV networks. That's why you see so many of these people who came from the traditional outlets, and now where are they? Right where everybody else is. And that's why the heat has to be turned up. The realness has to be pointed out. Not to talk about them, but so they don't bring that negativity over to this, thinking this is that. Because this isn't that. This is this. So they don't know nothing about that. And they've been lost in time because they've done so much in the protected, shielded, pampered way of being, which we made them pampered. We paid for their records. We bought their CDs. We made them be beneficial, and we were happy for them. But they must have not invested their paper, or they haven't evolved. So it's enough of that. It's too much damage done from all of that, still promoting that and this and that. It's way worse. And they ain't got no contribution. So a man among men is going to say a certain message. And who said it? Charleston White did. Why did it take Charleston White to say something that all of the people who present themselves as being smart ain't never said? There's a ceiling of how the action should be taken from there. So Charleston White has gotten his people to reach out and say, "Me gonna make sure you're good." Top people. He mentions it. He's gonna start being on top management teams. There's management that has to be an invitation for them to manage you. And that's not saying management is good or bad. It's just saying that he's now established himself by speaking certain truths that these other people wouldn't take the risk to say. See, the so-called black race is a follower race now. We really lead everything. The most patents of any other group that comes to America. The most inventions that shaped America. See, the most contributions in art, music, sports, all that so-called American descendants of slavery. So they put a stopper on American descendants of slavery. No, y'all can't participate no more. Let these other people try. And that's why it's a losing effort. That's why everything is down. Music is down. Art is down. Everything is weak. Because the people from here have been blocked out. The so-called administrators who are in charge of these positions who look black. They look American descendants of slavery. Some of them have egos and want to look like they're important. Some of them, their time has passed them by, and they don't want nobody who can rise up and help others. Got to help the country, or there ain't going to be no country. They don't know how to do that. They not qualified, but they in the positions because it's called an opportunist. They took the opportunity to sustain the positions they had while blocking others. That's the whole story. If anybody knows the story of New York City, and they know 50 Cent was blocked out by the whole music industry in New York. And it took a Caucasian dude, Eminem, to say, "I'll rock with him." Because they already would tell, "I wouldn't mess with 50 if I was you." I'm not saying 50 was good in how he made that How to Rob record that launched his career, because why would one put out a negative gun violence song and say it was a joke? That's all he was equipped to do because of his background, and he knew that was controversial, so he's one of the original trolls. But, if you got a troll to get down, you got to get rich or die trying. We got to have principles. We're not going to do certain things. These dudes will drop a record and say all the gangsters' name in it, not knowing that's an extreme violation of the streets and definitely a violation of omerta. It's always supposed to be silent if you really one of those, just because your family. See, once they brought crack in the game, the whole game went belly up and went down. Because anybody could get on once crack came on the scene. These wasn't no high-powered dudes. The gang was like a secret society. It was like you had to either prove yourself, and that was someone who took care of the community. These dudes stand on their same corner and were serving. Other people served. I'm not saying they didn't. I'm not saying people didn't serve, but it was people who made sure we don't do this to children. They had more morals, and they still did abusive stuff. I'm not saying they didn't, but it heightened. Crack was way worse than heroin. So with 50, what happened was it took Eminem to say, "Man, I'll mess with them." And that was really them dudes out in Cali anyway. The whole East Coast was mad at 50. I ain't saying that. I'm saying they still could have helped him. Like, "Hey, Fit, because you not really rhyme like that, because that's really out of order. If you really understand the game, you can't be saying people's real name. That's really dry snitching. That's really what you would call telling." So somebody ain't really of it, even if they family did something. Anybody could get a bag of crack. That takes zero skill. It's in your pocket. Someone hands you a bill. You take the money. I mean, a monkey can almost do that. Straight up. A monkey. You could teach a pigeon to exchange some cash. So there's no skill set in that. And when you tell a dude that, they get upset. "Oh, man, what you mean, man? We got ours." See, you arguing. Now, if I correct you, I'm going to teach you something that we ain't even supposed to be talking about. Go to community college down the street, take a course. It will keep you from the penitentiary. They ain't get that message. I'm building with these dudes in the street, and the funny first thing they say, you sound like them dudes in jail. Well, wait, is that a bad thing or a good thing? But they respect that. Killers, murderers, gangsters. They like, man, I wish I would have got that message when I was a kid. So it's no disrespect to these people. So what Eminem did, he signs 50 and the rest was history. Now, there's another argument about Eminem. Yes, Eminem is a guest of using so-called black culture. He acknowledges that. Now, when one gets economics and is put into the place of a great white hope, which he was, which is Elvis. These people still got talent. He's one of the best lyricists to ever rhyme. But he acknowledged, if you just talk down to him in a certain way, it's certain stuff Eminem should have did. He should have made sure all of the outsiders of in New Jersey, the group The Outsiders, he should have made sure none of them never got no financials problems, because they embraced him when he came to the East Coast to help him benefit. You could almost, and a lot of people he does look out for in Detroit. So one time, these people, an executive, tried to say that Eminem couldn't be on somebody's record in Detroit. And Eminem said, you can't do that to him, Jimmy Iovine. I got to be on this record. Or I can, he made it where I can move around Detroit. So Eminem stepped up on that. I know who it is and everything, but it's because it's a story. If you read, there was an article talking about it. It was in an interview. Somebody got their record turned down with a guest appearance from Eminem, and Eminem said, whoa, you can't cut him off like that. It'll be a no-fly zone in Detroit if I do that. But the point is, Eminem had the good heart to help 50 Cent with no so-called black folk in New York, not no, but many of them put the word out, don't let 50 get on. And that's what happened. So that was part of it. But my point is, for 50, the thing about Eminem also, when you talk about men amongst men, none of the dudes that was men amongst men, maybe 50 Cent wouldn't have listened to him anyway. But I would say he would have. And they tried to freeze him out, and they just made him stronger. He built himself up more. But the thing with Eminem is, and you're talking about long-range game, Eminem, see, people would say, Eminem ain't listened to in the street. We ain't bobbing our head. That ain't riding around music. It's a lot of Caucasians that can rhyme like Eminem. It's not, there's a handful in the country. That's a lot. They didn't have the production of Dre. They didn't have the timing of Dre. They just didn't have the formula. It may not have worked for them, because Eminem is rhyming. He's one of them people, when you go to one of them underground Monday night or Tuesday night clubs where it's that underground college radio style hip hop and it's lyricism, that's who listens to Eminem. You don't listen to Eminem for what he's to be dancing. You're listening to the wordplay and how he's putting it together. Caucasians are listening from being proud that he took something that was from somewhere else, and they're proud he achieved it. Oh, wow, yeah, we can do that too. That's inspirational for them as well. But this underground clubs, that's why when Eminem, the first places they got known were Raucous Records and this what they call it, the Lyricist Lounge, that type of venue. You got unknown venues in cities that nobody know about except them hardcore backpack underground rhyming dudes. He was one of those. Notorious B.I.G. was an underground dude like that, because he had extreme lyricism, but he knew how to put it together where once it was on a mainstream beat, he could still make it listenable, because all you got to do, he had to do the formula of talking negativity. Once you talking negativity and smoking weed and driving fly vehicles, that's what the streets were liking at that time. So anyway, not to tangent on that, pardon for that rant on that, but those who don't know, that would be clarified. Yeah, of course, he's the great white hope of rap and upheld, but he can rhyme. He did his part, and he could rhyme, and people listen to it. Oh, that's lyrical. That's lyricism. He have a talent for it, and he works at it. So he did that. But as we said, I would say in the critique of that, he ain't never take care of them outsider dudes the way he should have. Young Z or something like that, he make sure they was good with all the funds that one made. That's the difference between regular people and real dudes, the players in the game. The players make sure people eat. They make sure, I'm going to do this favor for here. If you ever saw the MC on tape, on video, it's the video of DMX riding around handing people cash. Here you go. Look out for people and not forget. who looked out for him when he didn't have it. So these dudes, they got the positions, the name of the cities that they in, but they not making sure people eat. You stand with this dude too long, it'll be a shooting. You'll be hurt. This ain't player game. So if you one more thing on that, if you look at the photograph for this long range comedy, when we for the thumbnail for that, it's the dude sitting in El Dorado, in Texas, and guess who that would be? It's a likeness that it's not the image of him, but after we made it, we thought about it and said, man, that's like Johnny Guitar Watson out of Houston, Texas, one of the greatest guitar players ever. Look him up. So that's why I say when you compare actual musicianship, there's a whole lineage of it. These dudes are of our founders and originators of breakthroughs in the blues and jazz and R&B. See what I'm saying? And you call it rock. Like, they got all these names, but around the world they already know these are the inventors, but they don't get that kind of credit in the States. So he's one of the most high level figures out of Houston, Texas, is Johnny Guitar Watson. And if you really want to get deep to it, Johnny Guitar Watson is one of the founders of G-Funk, that gangster. He referred to himself as Gangster of Love. And so when Snoop them was smart and Snoop them grew up listening to that, he's been on their records before. Johnny Guitar Watson. Johnny Guitar Watson played the guitar on the Chronic album. Was that 92? The Dr. Dre's The Chronic. That's Johnny Guitar Watson playing the guitar on Let Me Ride, if I'm correct. So this is why I say we don't know our history sometime, and we don't know that we are the catalyst of how things move, how the world moves. But the sad part, that's why Charleston White said, white people, your problem ain't with us, with black people in this country. It's with the Chinese. It's with Russia. Them the ones who bringing it, trying to build themselves together, come together as a superpower, and that's who's on your ass. Who's buying on? Who would you let buy your property? So-called black folk can't buy nothing in this country. American descendants of slavery can't hardly even move in the neighborhood, and you let these people come all the way from over here as communists and buy property? Really? So Charleston White exposed it. So Caucasians hear that like, damn, is that what we did? Is your hatred so much for so-called black folk, or your fear, or your confusion, or your systematic institutionalization of certain mechanisms? A lot of dudes who ain't took the right classes in school be saying black people can be racist. No, you can't, because it's an economic mechanism. You can be prejudiced. You can prejudge someone as a so-called black, but racism is an economic structure that prevents a group from economic progression. Now, that's not the exact definition, but racism is a power structure because it was built upon race being the group that would be exploited as so-called chattel slavery. That's what it meant. So when you got these dudes talking, as soon as they say something, you got to hurry up and go look that up, because this dude's talking out the side of his neck, the wrong side. They don't know. But because of what digital media allows, they let anybody get on some media venues and digital platforms, and they just might know this but don't know that. And that's what happens. So when Charleston White drops those jewels, he elevated beyond being just an individual that was talking for comedy, but had already put that work in the street. He had already put in enough community activism where he comes to a venue, they respect that, because he'll drop jewels and someone will be sitting at home saying, man, I want to start me a nonprofit. You ain't never heard nobody else breaking that down, because once those people get inside the halls of finance with the power brokers of so-called nations, they become one of them. Rap used to be an outside genre. You didn't get down with the Caucasian because they wouldn't let you down. So you had to build your own. And that's the tradition of what you see when you see Dolomite. That was self-made people. They did it from the ground up. They did it through the community. He sold albums on his own. And sadly, the story is, in interview, we don't know. There's people who put out there on interviews that Dolomite wasn't even getting no rhythm from Eddie Murphy when he was living. He wasn't getting put on. They put him on after Rudy Ray Moore had passed when they made that movie. He needed the same assistance way back in 1990, 88. He needed that type of lookout. Record executives may have said you can't mess with him. Knowing a lot of entertainers, a lot of men among men, they don't want to bow down to a dude and say, man, I'm just needing some help. That dude's still fighting. Like they say, a tiger loses his teeth, but not its nature. So he's still ferocious in his mind. I'm still Dolomite. I'm Rudy Ray Moore. I'm not bowing down and saying you the man. Sometimes one have to give that respect. But even still, but for what he did and his contributions, he didn't have to bow down. Man, if a player would drop something on him and help him get, man, well, let me help you get right. These dudes are selfish. That's why they've been in position so long. They don't have the ability to move on. They just a puppet. You don't need a Caucasian jumping on TV no more saying, these niggers can't never be in our town. We want them out. And if they try to come in, they got to go. You don't need them no more. You got brothers who say they you. Yeah, what's up, my brother? You know, we all got to stick together and make it happen. But he's doing worse than that Caucasian, because at least you know who that Caucasian is. He told you I don't like you. But the brother is talking like a wolf in sheep's clothing. He's really cannibalizing, stealing from you. That's why I said, if you drop this real, like what we're talking, this long range game, that's why I said that's a whole Charleston White series. Long range game is what it really is. But we said it's long range comedy game because it's long range comedy. But it's really long range game. And see, when they say long range game, what they used to say was Frisco to Maine, but really it means Maine to Spain. You see what I mean? I don't know about it, but I seen it. So I'm like, I don't know nothing about that, but I seen it. So what I'm saying is, you seen the words when you read it, and you see it and you can be it because you can project it. You see what I'm saying? So that's when you feeding it. When you can feed the multitudes, is that's what they say people do. You feed the nation. See, they got it where people, Caucasians, think we so angry because of what happened to our forefathers, but that made us what we are today. Because you didn't run off. Nobody went back and tried to say, well, I'm going to go to Liberia. They set up a colony. I'm going to be over there. Brothers they stood tall. See, because it wasn't about the money. It was about the love of the nation. See, the love of the people, good or bad. You know, see, so-called American descendants of slavery, they're not a hateful people. Everybody else come here to get what they can get and take it back and give it to their people. You get 5 Africans in your same job at your same department at your job. They're going to conspire against you, come together and block you out. And this is your country. Let me interview it. Let me show you how many examples I can show you. So I'm not saying it ain't good people, but it's the nature of people to stick with their own group. So we can't say it's not, and it's a further story that can't be told on no interview. It's a further story. So that's why we say we already gave up something. That's why Pac was greater. Pac was greater than these people because he could take one song and spark the mind. Remember when Pac used to say that? I might not change the world, but I'll spark the mind to change the world. Remember he used to say that? So that's why when my people listened to the song and said, keep your head up, all right? Will the real man get up? I know you fed up, ladies. Keep your head up. People said, hey, man, how are he going to say that on a record? Will the real man get up? I'm real. I'm up. So then they started an organization, Empowerment for the People.org, empowermentforthepeople.com, teaching people how to start a business from the ground up, especially women. Because women can make a move. Women getting laid off. Women got babies to take care of. They have certain ways they can make a legitimate, respectable move. It ain't on no reality TV show. Nah, they gonna exploit the sisters systematically because that's the origin of so-called American descendants of slavery. Exploitation. It's already built as a system and mechanism. So in order to evolve and change that, ideas have to be implemented and presented. These dudes ain't presenting and in the street, they call it kicking game. They ain't got game. These was dudes you good at rhyming. O.C. Doe, here I go. Here's the show. I know you know. They good at that. But when it come to wisdom inside the lyric, is very few got the wisdom. You got MCs who swore they dropped science. This is the danger of digital technology and the internet. There's MCs who swore they dropped a profound record. There's lawyers online who have critiqued their whole album, economists, PhDs, and said, yeah, everything in there you said didn't make sense according to when you look at this book, when you look at that. Like, they critique your stuff, but if you're just someone who listens to rap and you don't read Time magazine, and not to say Time is the standard, but just as an example, I mentioned it. These aren't people who read books for entertainment. Entertainment was reading. First, books were entertainment, then the advent of radio, and then after the advent of radio and we got television, you got people they forgot about the book. They used to only be book, nursery rhymes. It wasn't no throw in this DVD or stream this channel and tell the kids to sit down. No, you had stories. You read to the child. That's how the child know how to read. That's why so-called black folk, they ain't reading, they tired. Went to work, worked at Walmart, exhausted. Ain't got the energy and strength, but you pull out the inner strength for the babies. So that's why when we said when it was empowermentforthepeople.com.org, it was giving us information of how to even think in that way. You got a job, but here's another way to have some hope in this country, which this country has. Other people come here for the opportunities. They would make us here in this country always want to talk about how hateful and how we should be hating our country. Nah, man. Everything here is for that. The history, the bad and the good. Leave it there. Oh, take that statue down. No, leave that there. Leave him there. So that's you should be proud that you evolved. So it's a lot that people be arguing about the small things, but they don't got the solution. So in the empowermentforthepeople.org.com, it's the story of 3 steps to take to get right. How to get your business going. At least you thinking business. You got hope. You got you got faith, man. Maybe that can work. I'm good at doing this, so I can set it up like this. I got my digital account. I got me a website. I figured out how to do that. I got that very economically. We show them how to do it, free. So then we say, all right, but it's a book to expand on that. See. So there is a product with it. So we wasn't offended when Charleston White said, oh, man, you got to get another stream that's not online. So we said, well, boom, my people put that on Amazon. And it's unlock the physical fitness expert within you. Get in shape. When you get in shape, you can elevate. You're going to feel stronger. You're going to feel better because you still got that burden that you're carrying on your shoulders where you need to get your weight up. See, get stronger. The best you can, but don't fold. Just keep going. It ain't the money. These dudes got all these expensive jackets on. I'll buy all the kids ice cream with the price I would have bought that Gucci jacket with. Because the real bosses, the real live dudes, they get that same stuff. They ain't paid for that, man. Them celebrities get free stuff. Anyway, why you think they all raced? You could, when they had a fashion show, maybe the year that Pharrell Williams got the fashion, got to be the head of Louis Vuitton. All of the celebs was there because they got free stuff. Them dudes act too important like they the so-called royal family and they don't got to, show up nowhere. But they showed up to that because they knew they want to keep good with him so they can get stuff. All materialistic, low-level things. That ain't the high-level stuff. The high-level stuff is when the hustlers the real hustlers, not the ones who was trying to get at your sister with that bag. Not him. Nah. I mean, the real ones who at least they used to isolate the game from the babies and from the women and from what they call squares. Don't put them in it. This is our thing. It was just like them gangsters used to do on the other side. It was the other people who said, we don't put our own people in this. We keep them out of that. You be right around stuff and don't even know what you around. And then you get older and say, man, they kept it 100. These dudes was on the outside looking. So that's why their interpretation and interpolation of what the game was is crooked. They jumped on records, said some names, Iceberg, How I Swerve. They ain't never been around that level of the game. Never. You can see it because they ain't never spread out the love that way. See, they know, everybody had a bankroll, bought everybody ice cream, but then you at my sister and aunt later on that night trying to play them while you got a woman at home and you over here. Just that's a whole story. The dudes was out of pocket and wasn't no real elevated players. But they said it and they was allowed to stay in positions for decades. And now look at the world crumbling. Prices high because they don't have the radiated light to make everybody want to do better. They don't have the radiated light to make people do right. Even the bad do right. They don't have that. That's why I said they not men amongst men. The men amongst men make people say, well, goddamn, I didn't know you was that smart. That's what the people say. That's why when they saw Charleston White dropping jewels, they was like, uh-oh. We thought he was just one of them regular dudes. And they listened closer. They already knew who he was, but he wasn't known on a national scale for dropping wisdom, for dropping knowledge. So when they put the pressure on him through the mainstream media, talking about, you can't say nothing about that dude, Charlie Kirk. And he went off on him. He said, I went off on him. Just my character went off. That was characterization. That was satire. And that was almost a form of, parody. And he knew the different literary genres within language. And he knew that, which dudes don't know. They speak a language and don't know the language. Ain't that a trip? They know the lowest level of it, and then they laugh at you if you try to master it and have a grasp of it. If you know standard English and the uses of it. Now, oh man, you trying to talk white, son? You know what I mean? Like everything about them is backward, and that's sad. Not even ridiculing, but just sad. Ain't no answer for that. Because when you went in the spot, when you go in the club and them top dudes be in there, the dudes who got negative comments, they can't interact with them dudes. Because first of all, they think you the police if they don't know you anyway. You don't know nobody they know. They ain't talking to you. You can't. That's why we saw that example in the movie, like something of Training Day. When the rookie was rolling with Denzel Washington's character, he said, you sit over at that table. See, so these dudes internet give you the ability to seem like you at the same table. Nah, you over 2 tables away, bro. You way over there. So we ain't got no argument. What you mean? You don't know what I did? You know, and it ain't but they got it thinking that you did something of a violent nature. No, I did something of an intellectual nature. See, the story that can't be told, the $1 billion story. It ain't no story. It's just on the street corner, and everybody know who know. It wasn't brought to the internet like this. So what we're saying is it was education when it was empowerment for the people. It was like, nah, this book right here. Unlock the physical fitness expert within you. 3 steps to start your own business. You see what I'm saying? Like that. That's like the subtitle, I think they are, or something like that. But the point is, they got something. They gave something, because the free part is the first part, which is the website is the free information. See? So you give the juice. So Pac did that. That's the point. Pac gave that out. So Charleston White drops jewels and gives out knowledge. Oh, this is what you got to know when you get a 501. This is where you get the funding. He did that long ago. But then that ain't the part people remember. They talk with y'all nigga, blah, 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 blah. They remember all that wild stuff he's talking. See, as a character. That's the language of characters. These dudes are in character when they're serious, using the N-word recklessly, all out of pocket with that. Every third word, not knowing who's listening. That was a violation. There was a time the N-word wasn't used in front of no Caucasians. That has been dropped and missed. So as evolution goes, Caucasians know black folks ain't as evolved as they used to be. They know that. Trust me. You can't just change history thinking because it's your way now, you can change the past and what led to the present and what led to the future. You can't change that. But dudes thought, oh, man, I got a voice. We all got our own truth. No, it's one truth. There's one truth. Now, something can be more true. That's why in court, what do they make y'all testify to? What do they make y'all swear to when y'all about to get violated? The truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Ain't that what they asked for? Not your truth. Your truth is you not guilty, and you didn't steal what they said you stole. That's your truth. You just borrowed it, right? You was going to give it back when you got it, right? That's your truth. But the truth is what? A fact, the reality, the right knowledge of reality is reality, is the truth, the right knowledge. So you got the wrong knowledge, the backward knowledge, the sideways knowledge. That's called the mark knowledge. See, that ain't the live knowledge. These dudes ain't live. Dudes used to say, I'm live, fam. Not live broadcasting on a digital platform, but real in the flesh. Hip hop used to say funky fresh in the flesh. But that's come from the street, dude. All that come from the street. Charleston White hit him with that too. All that game y'all hearing that was street dudes did that. And rappers took a little bit here and there. Oh yeah, I'm gonna do that. You know, and they did what they did, but their manifestation, their iteration of it, I think that's the word, iteration, or it's like an evolution word or something like that. Pardon for using it wrong off the fly. But what they started using was skewed. It was backward. It was off. It wasn't right and exact. It wasn't. So when Charleston White hit him with the knowledge of how to start businesses and how to look, that's why he dropped those jewels. Caucasians heard him, and they heard him well. So nobody ain't even saying that online. Now, the knowledge was already known, and it was conversations already being had. But those who say they lead in these high-level positions, they ain't going to say that. They ain't going to lead that way because they not men among men. They not. They selling something real quick. Oh, yeah, y'all can go get this. We get that. We can respect that. But are they really standing as men when they leave the country? No, because the U.S. in itself is a country of confusion. Bunch of drug addicts, you know what I mean, to try to cope with the confusion because you got to read to figure it out. This system got libraries. You can go in, read, and educate oneself. Man, so it wasn't the funding. You can go in there. Think about that. A building that's with heat in there and you can read for free. Think about that. What makes this country better than all these other countries? It makes it better because you can educate yourself and then utilize the information that you learned. That's why they come here. But when they come here and they see it's dog eat dog, same group against same group, they can step right past. And that same group conflict, yes, it could be argued that it was caused by outside forces, but it's also perpetuated by those same forces now that it's been adopted into people's behavior. See, like I said, most of the PhDs and the brothers and sisters that got the PhDs that's on point, they're ignored. Maybe they present it in a way that's square, but I still got to check what they saying sometime, or they dropping some jewels, and yeah, they are, they know what they talking about. They just might not have the flavor of the street people. But the dudes who ain't got zero education, ain't read the hundreds of books, or they just can't put the information together the same way, because just because they didn't go to school don't make them not expert at what they know. But these be dudes like, nah, they just good at hustling, asking for something. See, that's why I said, well, give it up here, get this knowledge. And like I said, it's a funny thing. You hear these dudes talking like they the new evolution of some great voice. They not. If you read enough, you be like, nah, man, the solution is this. They ain't got that. And Charleston White slid in, dropped jewels, and demonstrated, I gave to the people, so let me collect my check. Let me go cross country with it. Let me make it cross country game. Remember that? They was talking that cross country game. That was game wasn't supposed to be shown. What they showed that wasn't even supposed to be public. But when it's this cross country comedy game and Charleston White showed it what it was, it's jokes. Yeah, we just talking jokes, man. There's jokes. We ain't super joking because we ain't super funny. But if you talking about jokes, long range game, as we said, that thumbnail you see, that's for the long range one that we want to do. We're going to expand the long range. That's Johnny Guitar Watson, among many. It's many, but just his figure of how he, his image of how he presented it, how he was fly. That's the dudes who wasn't really wilding out. It was game. It wasn't no bullying and always talking about thinking they had some force. No, the only force they got against their own people. These brothers who supposed to be tough in their town could never stand to them people who are ready and prepared. As you know what I'm saying. They ain't got that. They just taught to get forced and be. If you hear anything and anybody they beat up, it was somebody look just like them. That's all they ever did. And I ain't saying beat up nobody. I'm just saying they a coward, they bullies, and they cowards. Because if they was men amongst men and they had the knowledge, they would be global. If you got national reach, you've been on national platforms, but you ain't worldwide. You can go to some little country and they'll treat you like a king, but you can't go nowhere for real. You can't go to no big country and say nothing real. See, yeah, you can go over there and have a boxing exhibition or something. I'm going to go because they heard about what we just said right now. See, they biters of the game. They thieves of the knowledge. But when they had to do it on their own, they never did it. Look at how many years it took them to do it. And then when they heard about it and tried it, it's decades of infantile intellect. That's what they is. Dumb, stupid, backward, buffoonish, bullying, abusive, exploitative. You see what I'm saying? They don't got it. But because they seem like, oh, he got a bigger car than dude than them. Nah, man, these dudes is clones, copycats, biters, stealers, imitators, perpetrators, clowns, Springling Brother, Barnum and Bailey. What's that other one? Soul Circus? Come on, man. And I ain't saying it as an individual. I'm saying that's what the world is seeing. The world says that, not me. They mad at me. You think the world don't call these dudes who are doing things on a local level, bullying their own people? You think a country in Europe don't know if they look? Oh, he's a perpetrator. He ain't told, he ain't said, hey, I'm going to need this done. You can't do that because now you really going to get visited. You talking about some local stuff like an actor. They need to go to Hollywood because it's an act. It's their local. All right, you local. You got the ghetto under control. Yeah, we want that. All right. Oh, you accidentally did that? Man, can you not do that? You in check anyway. You in check. You ain't running nothing. For real. Not at this top level. Because that's a distraction. You get the dude. He looks like, see, they can't have them dudes in the white sheet walking around. You traded that position. You bully your own community. You exploit your own clients. That's what you do. You do it. They used to do it. Now they put you in that position. You answering from the bottom. You ain't a live dude like that. Because it's game. They ain't got game. Game don't attack their own like that. So that's why we said if we bring it low, nobody want to talk about these dudes' name. We talking about females, man. Trying to roll with the macking. Not that. These dudes, they lack that. Nah, I'm just saying, but if it were to be pointed, if one could see that direction, that's still small time. That ain't big level. They don't know about it. They don't got it. So when Charleston White dropped it and came at it at the world in the way which he did, because even when you talk to Caucasians, you talking global. Even though you talking local, they're global because they're globally respected. Because these dudes, they come in, want to slide next to the Caucasian and be his friend as a token. Well, I'll keep my foot on the neck of the American descendant of slavery for you. That's what y'all are, tokeners and haters. Because they want to compare to the history, which they can't. It's too much. If you destroy and replace what we've done, that's why it's going down. It has gone down in the last 25 years, decreasing in all aspects of entertainment because it's a bunch of imitators. Dudes can't sing. Auto-tune left and right, because the singing came from the Baptist, from the so-called Christian church. That's the gospel church. That's where the singers came from. Go look at it. Where did Jodeci come from? Where did KC and JoJo come from? See, where did Aretha Franklin come from? James Brown come from? You see what I'm saying? It's all church related. It was church voices that was brought into the mainstream of music. Look at the documentary called The Gospel Highway. So as I say, we can't give up too much game, but don't think we just don't hear ranting without documentation. That's why Charleston White opened the door. Now we could drop some knowledge and people can't they could never ridicule, but they try to. If a dude jumps on like a troll, he's probably law enforcement agent. He's some counterintelligence individual or just a clown. See, he's just a clown. He don't even get no conversation. Man, well, I'm arguing with you on the internet. You had to go into the spot where all the wild dudes was at and be in there. These dudes wasn't in. You gonna fight? No, they couldn't navigate by themselves in a den of wolves. They couldn't. They ain't put in that time. You can hide from thousands of miles away and talk reckless. So we apologize if anything said offensive. But as the example of being a man among men, there had to be some parameters that were pointed to, that people were out of order, out of line, or as Johnny Guitar Watson would say, out of pocket. See, out of pocket. People used to be able to be told, hey man, that was out of pocket. I've told dudes who've been in the penitentiary for 30 years, you ain't supposed to be doing that. These are killers. Fortunately, that's my cousin though. I can tell him that, a few times before we go off, because he will. But I said it, stood on it. No, that ain't right. People had that moral level at that time. Morals is dead. Own family will get you these days. So you have to double down and be a man among men. See, that's why they say the sisters ain't right. These dudes who in charge and who running stuff above the street level dudes, they not right. So the people who are on the top positions used to at least say, well, I can't do everything and say everything, but I'm going to lead by example. When they go in them meetings with them people, they say, I got it, what y'all want. Y'all don't want men in here? Obviously, they don't want men to be men. They want other people to be able to be like men. Well, he calling himself a man, but what is a man? It's mind. This is just a male. Every male is not a man, but every man is a male. See, they taking it to another level because that goes into what? The science of animal husbandry. Animal husbandry is farming. When you have different animals, each state, I'll say this before I get out, drop this bomb on you on here. This is common knowledge. If you're talking about agriculture, that's farming. When you're talking about cattle, when you're talking about, that's why each state in the South, they have a state fair. State fair, you come with your farm produce and you win awards and ribbons for your prize winning chicken, your prize winning cow, because this was one that you have raised and elevated the breed to the level of perfection. See, And he's now compared to others, and people come to you and say, well, damn, man, that's a hell of a rooster you got. How much you charge for one of those? I'm going to get me one of them and start me in line. And that was the pedigree. So the dudes who are in top positions ain't pedigree. They just the little runt that you gave away. But they gave him some paper, dressed him up, put him at the top. He seemed like he on point. That's why everything been falling for 30 years. Because it's been the fake. They real good. They studied good. They watch all the movies. You hear them talk about it. I was watching The Godfather. I know. That's where you got your game from. What? Right. A movie. So run that back. You got real life game from a movie. Was it based on a true story? Was it based on history? And even there's flaws in that and arguments there too. We get it. But they ain't got the real knowledge. And what they say is stuff that ain't supposed to be said in public. But they might be brilliant in this other area. Well, he brilliant right there. But right here, he a fool. And that's what we have. And you can't check nobody because once they got a certain amount of paper, they think they know everything. Oh, man, I know everything about everything. All right. No humble level of ability. But like I said, it wasn't even about them. It was the people they put in position where they no longer needed the racists and the so-called white supremacists because they got the Negro who would agree to function as them to be over all the other Negroes. And that's what you're looking at now. Straight clowns. And that's no disrespect to clowns at all. But that's what we have. And we don't have long-range game. Long-range game, you spit it in the street, you still spit it in the street. Everybody say, yeah, that's true. But them dudes who've been, in certain positions of retarded knowledge, retardation mentally, retarded, like I'll say, not retarded, pardon, that's a bad word for that. The ones who had suspended knowledge, the ones who had, I guess you would say, suppressed. What do they call it? What's that phrase they have? Arrested development, maybe it is, So as I say, pardon, when we even, that might be what it is. But when we throw out some ideas, that just comes from when you read and see stuff. So that's why I said it's a word called, I'll know the word next time. Iteration is something like that. Iteration, it's an iteration. That means another example of it, another evolution or, product of or something like, I'm going to look that word up and have it right when I use it next time. But that's why I said we shouldn't be afraid to use words that increase our information and knowledge and use it and build with it. Not just to talk it, but to actually apply it. It's applied science. You got to know the science, but what's the applied knowledge that helps others? So that's why I said with Pac, with Charleston White, they gave some knowledge which you can use. These other dudes, they just signing liquor deals. Ain't you Muslim? Muslims can't drink. So you out in public doing it, selling it. You got an endorsement deal with a liquor company with a Muslim name. Cool. But that means the rest of the world is laughing at you. Yeah, they ain't respecting that. They just said, oh, they were Negroes and they didn't have nothing and they desperate. That's how they looking at you. And these dudes played themselves in position because if you was really real, you can't be around them dudes and put them on game. They ego too big. Bro, you out of pocket. You out of order. You out of line, bro. You slipping. Can't tell nobody nothing. Oh no, what you mean? Next thing you know, they numbers has changed. They did some clown move. Ain't no real dudes in their circle. See, they just talk the talk, got on, and then they put dudes on who they wasn't supposed to be put on, and then they got mad when them dudes turned on them. The dude you put on was always a mark. He was never a live dude. He wasn't never fly. He wasn't never no upper level dude. He wasn't never no macaroni. He wasn't never a player in the game of art. He wasn't part of the game. But you put him on. He imitated, perpetrated, stole, and he false flagged straight up. And he put him on and he stabbed you, and you saying he was wrong. You was wrong too, but he was wrong more because he was always perpetrating a fraudulent individual. Fraudulating, as Flavor Flav would say. Fraudulated. And they got good qualities too. But the main quality and the positions they was put in on the chessboard, they was put in the sucker position. It's a sucker on there. Just like it's a joker on the in the card deck, it's a sucker on that. It's a sucker on that board. It's a lame on the board, and some call them a pawn. It's different pawns. You're going to be the pawn, but this time you're going to be the mark, and you're going to be the lame, and you're going to block these other ones from getting to me, and that's all these dudes are. Anyway, this was the Online Time Fame Podcast. I'm your host, JD, but as we say, stay tuned. We want to do some episodes called long range comedy. Charleston White's long range comedy, because we want to give credits. You say, why are you saying him all the time? We want to give credit for what he gave. He did drop some jewels. He did give some knowledge, and we want to give that credit, and we can also utilize that credit with something people are familiar with. They don't see no views on it, but they don't know. The people who know, it don't matter what the views may be. They know it's the information and the quality of the information to help others. That's what counts. So with that being said, let us just say peace, and we will hear from you soon.